Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take that stack of articles, research papers, and historical archives you shared with us and really cut straight to the core insights.
And today, we're talking about something absolutely fundamental. It touches every single professional life.
Every paycheck, every budget you've ever made, we're talking about compensation.
Right. It's the engine of our economic lives, but I think most people only really scratch the surface of what it all represents.
Yeah, it's not just a number on a contract.
Not at all. It's a reflection of, societal structure, legal obligations, and that constant friction between market supply and demand. Today, we're really going to dissect the difference between a salary and a wage.
Okay, let's nail down the basics right out of the gate, just to get everyone on the same page. A salary is that fixed number, right?
Right.
You get the same predetermined amount, usually paid monthly. It's a fraction of some big annual sum, and it doesn't matter if you worked 35 hours or, 45 hours in a specific week.
And from the company side, that fixed amount is a predictable, stable personnel expense. It's the cost of keeping you on board. A wage, though.
A wage is all about the clock.
It's all about the clock. It's
Right.
payment for work done over a very specific period, hourly or daily, or historically, you'd even see it per unit produced.
That's piecework.
That's piece wages, exactly.
Yeah.
When you're paid a wage, you are literally exchanging your measured time for money. And the employer's obligation to pay you for that time is pretty much non-negotiable, regardless of how the company's doing.
That distinction, fixed annual sum versus measured time, that really feels like the axis everything else turns on.
It is.
So our mission for this deep dive it's huge. We're going on a historical journey, tracing these ideas back literally 5,000 years. We're starting with salt and beer.
I love that part. Then we'll look at how economic revolutions just completely shifted who got paid and how they got paid.
And from there, we're jumping into the dizzying, sometimes really surprising world of global regulation. We're talking constitutional pay guarantees in Italy all the way to how governments in Zimbabwe fight hyperinflation.
And then finally, we'll bring it all home, right to your personal bottom line. We'll dissect the science of negotiation, look at why it works, and analyze how these persistent pay gaps are maintained, even with decades of legal protections.
Understanding this stuff really impacts your legal rights, your ability to build wealth, your net disposable income.
It truly is one of the most important concepts to fully grasp in the working world.
Okay, let's start where it all began. When did humans first get, paid?
The experts, they infer that the concept of a periodic payment, a kind of proto-salary, must have come about during the Neolithic Revolution.
So somewhere between, 10,000, 6,000 BCE?
Exactly. When societies got advanced enough to have an economy that went beyond just, day-to-day bartering.
But we don't exactly have receipts from 8,000 BCE, do we?
We don't. But what we do have is something absolutely concrete and, frankly, fascinating from Mesopotamia. Around 3100 BCE,
Okay.
we have cuneiform inscribed clay tablets. And these things, they function exactly like modern payroll sheets.
And what are they a payroll for?
Daily beer rations for workers.
So the first recorded paycheck was beer.
Basically, yes. And it's not just a funny historical fact. It's incredibly insightful.
How so?
Well, the payment wasn't just random. The symbols on the tablet are very deliberate. You have an upright jar, which means beer. You have a human head eating from a bowl, which means rations.
Okay.
And then you have these little impressions, circles and semicircles, that represent the exact measurement of the rations.
So this tells us that labor was already being measured and purchased, and that the pay was tied directly to what you needed to survive.
Precisely. It was directly commensurate with the level of sustenance they thought was necessary for the work.
So payment is about survival. Now, fast forward a couple thousand years, and another basic commodity gets tangled up in the idea of pay. Salt. This is around 550 to 450 BCE, and it's referenced in the Hebrew book of Ezra.
The role of salt was symbolic, but it was also profoundly economic. To receive salt became a clear synonym for taking pay or being in service to a ruler.
Why salt, though? What made it so special?
Because it was essential for preserving food, for survival. And it was a critical commodity that was strictly controlled by the monarchy.
So if the king controls the salt, he controls your ability to live.
You've got it. Relying on the king for salt meant relying on him for survival, which made loyalty absolute. There's a line in the text, Ezra 4.12, where servants of the Persian king say they're loyal because we are salted with the salt of the palace.
Wow.
It literally weaves the substance you need for life directly into the concept of government employment.
And that idea flows directly into the Roman system, doesn't it? It gives us the word we still use.
Salarium, the Latin word that connects employment, salt, and soldiers.
Right, the famous salarium. But the history here is a little tricky, isn't it? There are these popular modern theories about where it comes from, but the research shows well, they're just theories.
That's right. The first one, the one everyone's heard, is that Roman soldiers got a specific allowance, a salarium, to buy salt.
Great.
The second theory is that they were paid for conquering or guarding the vital salt trade routes, the via salaria.
But the crucial insight for you, the listener, is that we don't have the ancient evidence.
No original Roman receipts, no military ledgers, no historical commentary that definitively proves either one. The literal connection between the coin and the salt purchase is still, a bit of a historical puzzle.
But what isn't a puzzle is the legacy.
Oh, the legacy is indisputable. Regardless of the exact mechanism, the salarium paid to soldiers cemented the whole Western concept of work for hire. And it gave us that enduring expression we still use.
Being worth one's salt.
Exactly. To provide value commensurate with your pay.
And that connection between a soldier's fixed pay and this idea of dedication seems really important.
It's key. Soldiers, unlike a peace worker, were expected to be totally dedicated to the state. 247. This fixed payment was compensating them for an expectation of total professional commitment.
Which maps perfectly onto the modern salaried executive, right? You're not punching a clock, you're just expected to get the job done.
Absolutely. The idea of being on call or committed, regardless of hours, is a direct line from that Roman soldier.
But even with this clear idea of a salarium, fixed salaried work was actually really rare in the ancient and medieval world.
Oh, incredibly rare. It was reserved almost exclusively for government service, the military, or very high-status roles.
So courtiers, top administrators, that kind of thing.
Right. For the vast majority of people across the Roman Empire and medieval Europe, the models were completely different.
And a lot of the compensation was in kind, wasn't it?
Precisely. The main pay for most labor was lodging, food, maybe some livery clothes, basically food, clothing, and shelter.
Because there wasn't a big cash economy for most people.
There wasn't. And this is in sharp contrast to the dominant labor models of the time, which were things like slavery, serfdom, indentured servitude, or sharecropping, where payment was either non-existent or just a tiny fraction of the produce.
Even in the guilds, it was different.
Very different. A master in an artisan guild might have salaried assistants, but the structure was largely cooperative. It was focused on communal production, not a bureaucratic payroll system.
So for most of history, compensation was about sustenance, in-kind payment, or just deeply non-free labor. The modern structure was still centuries away.
The big shift really starts with the commercial revolution, which runs from, say, the 16th to the mid-17th centuries.
Yeah.
And then it just accelerates with the first industrial revolution in the 18th and 19th centuries.
And what's surprising here is that this era of massive growth didn't really kick off the salary era. In fact, it kind of did the opposite.
It did. It solidified the wage model. The jobs that were created by this early expansion, textile workers, miners, dock workers, they were jobs that were really easy to measure.
In time or in output.
Exactly. So they were paid hourly, daily, or very commonly in the early factories per unit produced. Piecework.
The idea of a fixed annual salary for those jobs it was totally foreign.
Completely. Factory owners wanted to pay for measurable results, not for some vague concept of commitment.
But these revolutions did introduce some new compensation models, especially at the very top of this new global economy.
Right, with the formation of those early huge corporations.
The East India companies.
Exactly. The key managers and founders of those enterprises weren't always paid a salary in our modern sense. Instead, they were often paid as owner shareholders. Their wealth was tied directly to the success or failure of the whole venture.
I mean, we still see that structure today, don't we, in certain high-level fields?
It's an enduring model. Just think about equity partners in law firms or accounting firms or investment banks.
Right. They don't really get a salary.
Not a technical one. They get a periodic draw against their share of the firm's annual earnings. The pay is entirely tied to profit sharing and risk. It's a direct evolution from those early corporate models.
Okay, but here's where the real innovation happens. The moment that gives rise to the system most of us know today, the Second Industrial Revolution.
Roughly 1870 to 1930. This period, sometimes called the Technological Revolution, was powered by massive infrastructure.
Railroads, electricity, the telegraph.
All of it. And these technologies enabled the rise of the large, complex, modern business corporation, something far beyond the scale of the East India companies.
And to manage these industrial behemoths, you needed something totally new. A dedicated, educated, non-labor class of people.
Precisely. You couldn't run a national railroad with just a few owner partners. You needed layers of middle management, administrators, accountants, organizers.
And this is what creates the salaried executive and administrator class.
It fundamentally necessitated it.
So why did the fixed salary fit this new class so well when the hourly wage was king on the factory floor?
Because their work was inherently qualitative, not quantitative.
Right. How do you measure the hourly output of an executive negotiating a contract?
You can't. It's impossible. You can easily measure widgets per hour, but managerial output, it's just not something you can timestamp. The fixed salary gave predictability to both the company and the employee, and it aligned with that old idea we talked about.
The Roman soldier, the expectation of total professional dedication.
Exactly. And this shift was so profound that in countries that were rapidly industrializing, they actually had to invent a term for this new social status.
Which brings us back to Japan and the term salaryman.
Coined in the early 20th century to describe the men doing this new, dedicated office work. And it's more than just a job title. It signifies a whole social contract.
Tell us a bit more about the depth of that cultural idea.
Well, the status of a salaryman is something people were often groomed for from school. It required these rigorous selection processes. And historically, to achieve this status, which was only open to about a third of Japanese men, it required just total dedication to the company.
Lifelong employment, incredibly long hours.
Sacrificing personal time for the collective, absolutely. And while global forces have kind of fractured that lifelong promise, the dedication and the status that go with being a salaryman is still a very powerful cultural force.
So that concept of total dedication is really the lasting legacy of this split between salary and wage.
It is. The salaried person manages a workload. The wage person is paid for time supplied.
And as the economy kept evolving, post-World War II with the rise of the service and knowledge economies,
Salaried roles became the default for executive, administrative, computer, creative jobs, all of it.
which brings us to the final big evolution in pay, the modern total rewards system. The base salary is no longer the whole story.
Not by a long shot. It's just a fixed foundation. Total rewards covers the entire value proposition an employee gets.
So that includes the fixed salary.
Plus variable pay like bonuses, incentive pay, commissions. And then you have the non-monetary stuff like health benefits, retirement plans, and all the perks, gym memberships, flexible hours, you name it.
And this big move towards variable outcomes-based pay is directly tied to how people view their careers now, isn't it?
It's a reciprocal relationship for sure. Just look at the data. Individuals who were aged 18 to 44 between 1978 and 2008 held an average of 11 jobs.
11. So the fixed job for life model it's basically gone.
For most people, yes.
Yeah.
And that lack of long-term tenure pushes compensation to focus on immediate performance and variable outcomes.
So instead of paying you to show up for 30 years, they're paying you for the measurable value you deliver this year.
That's a great way to put it. For knowledge-based work, the engagement model shifts. It moves towards a kind of partner-like arrangement. Your fixed pay covers the commitment, but your variable pay bonuses equity links your reward directly to the results you get.
Which means both sides have to constantly be doing their research, using salary surveys and market data to figure out what that base salary should even be.
Which is why preparation is so critical when you're negotiating.
That transition from paying for time to paying for outcomes is such a crucial insight. Okay, let's pivot from economic history to the often stunning realities of global labor law.
When we look at global laws, you really see how different societies have codified their values about labor. A great place to start is a country that puts the dignity of the worker right in its founding document, Italy.
Italy's approach to the minimum wage is so unique. It's not a single law passed by the government. It's a constitutional right that has to be enforced through negotiation.
Exactly. Article 36 of the Italian Constitution guarantees that workers have the right to pay that matches the quality and quantity of their work, ensuring them and their families a free and dignified existence. The state doesn't set a number.
It sets a standard of living.
It sets a standard of living.
So how does a constitutional guarantee become an actual wage floor on the ground?
It's enforced almost entirely through industry-by-industry collective bargaining agreements. These are protected by trade unions that also have constitutional status. So these agreements set the minimum pay for hundreds of different sectors.
And if there's a dispute?
The Italian courts will often reference the rates in those nationwide contracts to decide if someone's pay meets that constitutional standard of a free and dignified existence.
That is a really powerful model. And Italy also tackled gender pay right in the Constitution.
Article 37. It explicitly guarantees working women equal rights and equal pay for comparable jobs. And another unique thing about Italian pay, you need to understand the concept of RAL, which is Retribuzione Annuale Lorda, gross annual salary.
Okay.
And uniquely, the law requires employers to continuously set aside a specific severance guarantee for every worker called the TFR, which is paid out when they leave. It's a mandatory accrued benefit built right into the system.
Wow. Okay, so if Italy uses collective bargaining, Poland takes a more traditional statutory approach.
Very structured. Article 65 of the Polish Constitution requires the Parliament, the Sejm, to specify the minimum salary. Then the specific number is announced by the Council of Ministers by September 15th every year.
And this covers everyone.
It covers standard employment contracts, but also, importantly, the minimum hourly rate for service contracts. So it gives a baseline protection to people in the gig or contract economy, too.
Now let's jump across the Atlantic to the U.S., where the legal line between wage and salary isn't just about time versus fixed pay, it's about who gets overtime.
Right, and this is all governed by the Fair Labor Standards Act, the FLSA, from 1938.
And the FLSA is the foundational document that really codified this whole separation.
It is. It recognized that hourly wage workers, the non-exempt employees, must be covered by the federal minimum wage and are entitled to overtime pay, so time and a half, for every hour they work over 40 in a week.
And the whole point of the exempt category was to stop employers from just calling everyone salaried to get out of paying overtime.
That was exactly the point. To strip a worker of those crucial protections, the employer has to prove the employee falls into one of 5 specific exempt categories: executive, administrative, professional, computer, and outside sales. But just having a fancy title isn't enough.
You have to pass 3 rigorous legal tests.
3 tests that act as legal gatekeepers.
Okay, lay them out for us.
First is the salary basis test. This means the employee has to get a predetermined fixed salary that can't be reduced based on the quality or quantity of their work.
That's the core of what a salary is.
It is. Second, the salary level test. The salary has to meet a specific minimum threshold. The 2016 rule set this at $913 a week, which comes out to 47,476 titles a year.
And our sources noted an interesting tweak to that rule involving variable pay.
That's right. It was a nod to that total reward system we talked about. The rule allowed employers to use non-discretionary bonuses and commissions to satisfy up to 10% of that required salary threshold.
That's a key detail. The law is adapting to reality.
It is. And the third test is the duties test. This is critical. It ensures the employee's primary duties actually involve real, executive, administrative, or professional functions. You can't just call a factory supervisor a manager of production logistics and pay them 48 grand to avoid overtime unless their main duties are genuinely managerial by the legal definition.
That structure really grounds the U.S. system. Okay, let's look at some unique payment cycles around the world, starting with Botswana.
Botswana is a great example of a system with clear legal guardrails. Salaries there are almost all monthly, paid out between the 15th and the end of the month.
And the law is specific about that.
The Botswana Employment Act says the payment period can't be less than a week or more than a month, with monthly being the default. And payment has to be settled by the 3rd working day after the pay period ends.
And they have explicit rules about compensation in kind. A bit of a throwback to the Roman system.
It is. The law mandates payment in legal currency, but partial payment in kind is allowed under very strict conditions.
To protect the worker.
Absolutely. The payment in kind has to be appropriate for the employee's personal use, the value has to be fair and reasonable, and here's the big protection: the value of that in-kind payment cannot exceed 40% of the total payment.
So you can't get paid 90% in company-branded T-shirts.
Exactly. That 40% cap is a serious piece of protection.
Now let's talk about Spain, the tradition of getting paid 14 times a year.
This is a genuine Spanish tradition, the pagas extraordinarias. Your annual salary is calculated, but it's paid out in 14 installments.
So you get your regular monthly paycheck, plus 2 extras.
2 additional full payments, usually one in July for summer holidays and one in December for Christmas.
What's the history behind that? Is it a modern thing?
No, it actually dates back to old traditions of giving workers bonuses for holidays or harvest periods. Today, it's all codified in law or collective agreements. The 2024 minimum wage, for instance, was set at €11, 130.44 a month, paid across those 14 installments.
It sounds fantastic getting 2 bonuses checks a year, but I'm guessing with European taxes, the calculation gets a little tricky.
You've hit it right on the head. Spain has pretty high income tax rates and significant Social Security contributions. The difference between the gross salary and what you actually take home is substantial,
So you need a calculator.
which is why everyone in Spain uses a sueldo neto calculator, a net salary calculator, to figure out their real disposable income when they're looking at a job offer.
Okay, jumping over to Asia, we mentioned the Japanese salarymen. What about the formalities of how they get pay raises?
There's a real persistence of tradition there. Historically, employers in Japan would notify staff of a salary increase with a formal document called a jure.
And that still happens.
In spirit, yes. Large companies now might use an electronic form or an email, but the formality and the expectation of a clear notification is still a really important cultural part of compensation.
And India's system is all about speed and predictability.
Very much so. India's Payment of Wages Act sets rigid deadlines. While a lot of companies aim to pay on the last working day of the month, the law sets specific cutoffs. For companies with under 1,000 employees, they have to pay by the 7th of the month. For larger companies, over 1,000 employees, it's the 10th. It's a crucial protection for workers in a rapidly developing economy.
Finally, let's go back to Europe and this Dutch concept of Jan Modal. This is fascinating, using statistics for politics.
Jan modal comes from the statistical term modus, or mode, most frequent value in a data set. So Jan modal represents the typical modal income earner in the Netherlands.
Most common salary.
Exactly. And it's a key reference point for government policy.
So the government actively designs policy to protect this average worker.
Precisely. Macroeconomic policies, tax changes, benefit adjustments, they're often calibrated to make sure they don't hurt the financial stability of Jan modal. It's a way of focusing political energy on the largest segment of the workforce.
And it seems to work. The Netherlands is one of the highest paying countries in the EU.
It is. Top 5. Which makes the next fact interesting. While they're strong on fixed pay, the Netherlands only ranks 36th in Europe for secondary benefits.
So perks and non-wage compensation.
Right, but the research suggests that area is now increasing in focus as Dutch employers try to attract knowledge workers in a really competitive global market. And just to bring it full circle, the Dutch word for salary, soldage, is directly linked to the gold coin, the solidus, used to pay Roman soldiers.
It all comes back to Rome. We've laid out the history, the legal frameworks. Now we have to confront the massive failures within these systems, the places where compensation rules meet. Well, extreme economic turbulence and deep-seated social disparity.
And South Africa offers one of the most sobering examples of income disparity. You have historical structural imbalances that persist, even with constitutional mandates for equality.
The statistics on the wage gaps there are they're alarming.
They're stark. The research highlights the severe income disparity where, based on older but still representative data, Black Africans earned only 22.8% of what the white population earned.
What does that look like in real numbers?
The median monthly earnings for white individuals was R$9,500. For their Black African counterparts, it was R$2,167. That illustrates a profound, persistent gap in society, with millions of people falling below the poverty line.
So how does the legal system even begin to fight a gap that huge?
It starts with the Constitution. Article 9 provides a powerful, actionable mandate against unfair discrimination, including race and gender, and employees can and do invoke this protection in equal pay disputes.
So it's not just a statement of principle.
Not at all. And beyond that, minimum wages are used very widely in South Africa, not just as a floor, but as a specific tool for income redistribution and social protection, aimed at reducing this historical inequality without blowing up government welfare spending.
It's a legislative attempt to correct a systemic economic injustice.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's move to Zimbabwe, which gives us the most extreme case study of how compensation completely collapses and then has to radically adapt when a currency goes through hyperinflation.
Zimbabwe's economic history is just a dramatic story of currency failure. Historically, the country had a competitive advantage because of low labor costs. But the hyperinflation cycles in the 2000s, followed by dollarization, adopting the US dollar, and a soaring cost of living, It just completely destabilized the whole system.
What did that actually look like for an average worker?
Let's use the farm worker example. During the initial hyperinflation, they'd earn a nominal amount in local currency that would be worthless by the end of the day.
And even after they switched to the US dollar?
The reality is still cruel. Before the shift, the equivalent of $20 could buy a basket of essential goods that costs $500 today. Now, that same farm worker might earn $80, but that basket of goods, soap, food, school fees, it still costs $500. Their purchasing power, their real wage, has been decimated.
So during the peak of that crisis, companies literally could not pay people in money fast enough for it to hold any value. The salary became the cheapest part of production.
It did, and this led to the rise of the non-monetary salary. It was fascinating.
What did that look like?
Companies became incredibly inventive. The most popular form of pay was fuel coupons. Employees were literally paid in liters of gasoline.
Because in a society with constant fuel shortages, that's a stable, tradable commodity.
It was highly liquid. You could use it, or you could sell the coupons on the parallel market for real US dollar value.
What else?
Another common method was paying employees in the company's own product. So workers at an abattoir might get paid in pork or meat products. Since the market price for these things was often controlled, getting paid in product allowed workers to sell it for its true market value, or at least feed their families.
And I saw that shares were also used as a form of pay.
Yes. Listed companies on the stock market would sometimes provide shares to employees as their pay. Not as part of a formal stock option plan, but just as a stable store of value that was protected from the currency collapse.
And this complexity goes all the way up to the highest earners, doesn't it? We might think a big US dollar salary in Zimbabwe would be a fantastic life.
But the sources paint a much more complex picture. It's about the cost of self-sufficiency.
What do you mean by that?
Well, a top-earning executive gets a large salary, but that salary is fundamentally balanced out by having to pay for all the necessities that the state provides in other countries.
So they're buying their own infrastructure.
Exactly. Paying for and running diesel generators 24/7 because of power cuts, digging boreholes for water, covering the huge costs of extended family care because there's no government welfare. They're using their competitive salary to buy their own private social safety net.
That really reframes what a competitive salary even means. Okay, moving from economic collapse to systemic inefficiency. There's some fascinating research connecting public sector pay directly to corruption.
This is a vital global governance insight. The research confirms a really powerful correlation. Higher salaries for public sector workers act as a deterrent. They help reduce corruption.
Because it removes the financial pressure or incentive to take a bribe.
That's the idea. But the research suggests it's not just the size of the paycheck that matters. It's the internal equity of the payroll structure itself.
That's the key finding, isn't it?
It is. The research demonstrates that countries with smaller public sector wage gaps, where the difference in pay between the highest paid and lowest paid government workers is narrower, they exhibit less corruption overall.
So perceived fairness within the system is as powerful a tool against corruption as just raising salaries at the top.
It strongly implies that, yes, a system that feels fair internally seems to reduce the sense of entitlement or desperation that can fuel bribery up and down the bureaucratic ladder.
We've traveled 5 millennia, we've spanned the globe, and now we arrive at the point where the individual interacts most forcefully with this whole system, salary negotiation. And the payoff here it's genuinely massive.
And we really need to dispel the myth that negotiation is just for high flyers. A 2009 study gave us concrete evidence. Employees who negotiated their salary saw an average increase of $4,913 from the original offer.
And that's just the immediate gain. What's the long-term impact of that first bump?
It's exponential. Let's say you negotiate a starting salary that's $5,000 higher. If you stay in the workforce for 30 years, and you just assume a modest 3% average annual raise, which is often based on your current salary, that initial negotiation results in hundreds of thousands of dollars in cumulative earnings difference over your career.
Hundreds of thousands.
It is probably the single most consequential financial action you can take when you accept a new role.
And it serves a purpose for the employer too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Successful negotiation is a demonstration of competence. When you engage effectively, you're showing the employer your interpersonal skills, your ability to handle complex situations, your comfort with conflict.
So if it's done well, it's a win-win.
A confident hire and a satisfied employee. Exactly.
So if the ROI is that huge, what's the #1 factor for success?
Preparation. It is non-negotiable. You cannot walk in and just hope to wing it.
So what does that preparation look like?
First, you have to do extensive background research on comparable salaries. Use salary surveys, public data, to establish a reasonable, robust range for the position and your experience level. Second, you have to strategically assess any alternative offers you have.
Because those are concrete leverage points.
They are. And third, you have to know the employer's boundaries. Research the company's internal structure, their known limits. You need to figure out where they can make concessions. Is it base salary, a signing bonus, equity, vacation time, and what might be completely off limits?
And you need to organize all this before you even start talking.
Script your responses to common objections. Be ready.
The psychology of the negotiator also plays a huge role here, doesn't it? The research points to big differences based on risk tolerance.
This is key to understanding why so many people, even people who know they should negotiate, just don't. That 2009 study showed that risk-averse individuals, they worry about appearing ungrateful.
Or that they might jeopardize the whole offer.
Right, so they either avoid it completely or use these weak apologetic approaches.
As opposed to the risk-tolerant group.
The more risk-tolerant people, they just treat negotiation as a standard, expected part of the process. And predictably, they show superior financial outcomes over time.
So shifting your mindset is half the battle.
Viewing it as an opportunity, not a threat, yes.
And the specific mindset you adopt at the table shapes the outcome, even if the dollar amount is the same.
We see two very distinct approaches here. First is the distributive approach.
The traditional win-lose mindset.
The zero-sum game. Every extra dollar for you is a dollar lost by them. And while people using this approach often got a high salary, the study noted they reported significantly lower satisfaction with the process afterward.
They felt adversarial.
Exactly. The other approach is the integrative approach.
The win-win.
It views the negotiation as a cooperative effort to expand the possibilities, not just salary, but benefits, professional development, flexibility. These individuals secured an increased salary and reported high satisfaction because they felt the process built a relationship.
Okay, finally, we have to talk about how ingrained societal factors, specifically gender, impact these outcomes and perpetuate pay gaps.
It's a critical piece of the puzzle. The data shows men and women are equally likely to start a negotiation, but the results are consistently different.
How different?
The outcomes are disparate. Studies indicate men achieve about a 2% higher starting salary than women when they're negotiating for the exact same role.
And that's often traced to key tactical differences.
It is. Men tend to use what we call active negotiation tactics. They directly ask for the higher salary, they anchor the conversation high, they use their external offers forcefully.
And women?
The research suggests women often lean toward more indirect approaches. They might focus on self-promotion, emphasizing their motivation or framing their request in terms of their commitment to the company, rather than just making a direct financial demand.
And the roots of this disparity are deep. They go way beyond the professional world.
They're multifaceted. Some research points to early childhood play patterns, others to differing cultural views on the importance of salary versus work-life balance, and even lower confidence levels reported by women in these high-stakes discussions.
And there's that subtle but powerful factor of just being aware of the stereotype itself.
This is a critical psychological finding. The simple awareness of the stereotype that women tend to get lower outcomes can directly cause those lower outcomes. It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Stereotype threat.
Exactly. It can curb assertiveness or cause women to aim lower than they otherwise might.
And these gaps are not just a Western thing. The South African data highlighted extreme racial gaps, but the gender gap is also very pronounced.
The data from South Africa confirms this. Median monthly earnings for men were R3,033, while for women they were R2,340. That means women in paid employment earned just 77.1% of what men earned. It confirms that this is a complex systemic issue across racial, economic, and gender divisions all over the world.
So this deep dive has taken us across millennia. We started with the first written pay stub for beer rations, moved through the Roman concept of salarium and the dedication of the soldier, and charted the revolutions that created the modern salaried manager and the modern hourly worker.
And we've seen these dramatic variations globally, from Italy's constitutional guarantee enforced by unions to Spain's delightful 14 annual payments.
And the incredible economic adaptations in places like Zimbabwe, where people are paid in fuel coupons just to survive hyperinflation.
The core takeaway for you, I think, is the need for adaptive thinking in today's economy. Compensation has fundamentally shifted away from just simple fixed pay. It's now a highly complex total reward system driven by the demands of the knowledge economy.
So even with strong legal protections in place.
Even with things like the US FLSA or Italy's constitutional mandate, the necessity of personal negotiation remains the most powerful determinant of your own financial success and career path. You just can't rely on the fixed base salary alone.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. If compensation is increasingly tied to bonuses, incentives, and outcomes in knowledge-based roles, what happens to the fixed, time-based value of labor? If your contribution is measured by the quality of a merger or a creative design and not by a clock, how do we redefine what it means to be worth one's salt? Is the future of compensation moving every role, salaried or not, toward a performance-driven, partner-like model where your fixed time is just the cost of entry and the measurable outcome is everything? It's a question that will define the next century of work.